Good afternoon. Buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a Que Pasa Mujer. Welcome to Que Pasa Mujer. We're here on another Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Estamos aquí todos los domingos a las 4 de la tarde. Eh, Hoy todavía estamos celebrando el mes de la mujer. We are still celebrating Women's Month. So super excited to celebrate it with you. A couple of things. Maddie's granddaughter was born not on my birthday. She was a day late. So she was born on the March the 13th. So I just wanted to welcome her into the world. Maddie's not here with us today. She's doing a poetry event today, but I'm sure she would have talked about her habichuelita today. That's what she called her. So Maddie will definitely talk to us a little bit more about how things went on that day. Nikte is trying to log on with us because I think she's in a new location at her new home, so she'll be with us soon. And we're super duper, like, I didn't look up my synonyms today, but I'm super excited about our guest today. Her name is Michelle Guitierrez, and I'll tell her more in the show, but she has truly impacted my life in a capacity that I cannot explain into words. So, Mark, we're going to go ahead and bring Ms. Gutierrez on so we can go ahead and get started. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for being on our show. We're super excited that you're here because we want to get everything we can from your brain.
Thank you so much for having me, Vivian, and for such a warm welcome. I'd love to hear how circles have impacted your life.
Yes. So I'm an only child, and so I have always been very observant. So I've always watched people. I've always been very quiet. I consider myself to be an introvert. Now that I've gotten older, I've come out of my shell a little bit. But I want you to tell us a little bit about what circles are, because I don't know if you could tell through wherever you're watching us. But ever since I think you and I met probably over a month ago, and when I met you, it was just right aligned with how I live my life and how I try to do things. And it's just funny how just things come into your life, and it's like now there's a name to it, which is circles, and it's like these puzzle pieces that happen in my life, and it's like another puzzle piece, found itself in my life. So I want you to tell us a little bit about what are circles.
So, the circle practice that I teach and I train and I run is part of a restorative practices a toolkit. So it's a way of communicating where you're sitting in a circle. So it looks like a something very familiar, but the way you are actually interacting, because there's no interrupting, there's no crosstalk, and you count on a talking piece. Everybody's voice is valued equally. Everybody's voice is heard and seen and held equally. And so, circle is a way to have all kinds of meetings, like celebration meetings, and you can have memorial meetings. You can also have problem solving circles and conflict resolution circles, and then healing from harm circles. So it can go from anything from being very light. You could teach. You have teaching circles, right? All the way through to healing from harm. And I've run circles for people who have actually killed other people in other members of their family. And so it's goes from very light, where you're holding circles for children to talk about their summer vacation, all the way to healing from a very serious crimes. So, but circles is a very powerful way for community to heal together.
Yes, I love it. So when I was trained by you, one of the stories that you mentioned, if you could tell us the story on the show, was there was some type of, I think it was teenagers that vandalized the building, and instead of the owners calling the cops, they did a circle. Do you remember that story?
Is it the one that I held? The
I
circle
think
that I
I
held.
think so. Hmm.
So, a lot of people ask me what the difference between restorative justice and traditional justice is, and sometimes it's really easy to explain when you're, hi, Nick.
Hi, Nick.
Hi. Please continue. I don't want to interrupt. I just have had a little bit of spotty internet and I'm here and please continue, Michelle.
So Viviana just asked me a question to share a story about a circle that I held, and I wanted to give it a little bit of context because I work in restorative justice, and a lot of people don't know what restorative justice is, understandably, because I don't think that a lot of people are exposed to it. And so I like to think of restorative justice as, instead of in traditional justice, your energy is put to finding who's at fault and what is an appropriate level of punishment. That's a traditional justice system. It works for in some cases, it doesn't work in some cases. Restorative justice is actually where you put the energy, instead of finding fault and punishment, you're actually putting the energy towards healing. Instead of individuals, which is traditional justice, which is a victim and a perpetrator, in restorative justice, it's a community healing itself, taking responsibility for harm that's been caused within a community, and the community, each person who as a stakeholder, taking responsibility for their own part in the harm that's been caused and experiencing the harm that's caused. So there are two ways to look at justice, and one focuses on harm, one focuses on the blame, the fault, and the punishment, and one focuses on healing. And so I teach the one that's focused on healing. And Viviana remembers the story that I told in our training. There was a historical monument out in the islands, because I'm in New York, and it is a Quaker house that is like still pristine from the day, like when they had the original Quakers that settled it. And there's a whole community members that as a board members of this house that keeps this house as pristine as it is. And you can stay there, but you have to pay for and donate to the house. These kids had gone in and vandalized the house. Drew pictures on the walls. In the guest book, had written all kinds of expletives, and everything was caught on video. And so the board members, instead of calling the police and having the and all of the kids that were culprits were underage. So instead of calling the police and having these kids have a record or anything, an arrest record, they found me and I ran circles for them. And the kids, I think, were so grateful for having this process instead of actually a punitive process. They showed up and was able to take accountability for their actions. They themselves came up with their own punishment. They wanted to volunteer time to keep the house, to maintain the house, also publicize about activities and events at the house, host things at the house to raise awareness of the history of the area. And so the kids themselves came up with the idea. And the board members, not only did they feel supported by the kids, they felt like the lessons of the house was passed on to the kids. And so it served that community very, very, very well, much better than if the kids actually ended up with records. Even if they spent time in juvenile, nothing would have healed quite as well as it did after that circle. So Viviana, was that the story that you had in mind? I think that we're
Yes,
frozen.
definitely. That's it.
Okay.
What a powerful story, Michelle, of really how I think there's just from what you work. I know Viviana was telling us the story a few sessions ago or a few episodes ago, and I was just so excited because I think there's so much power in what you do, and it really lives in empathy and for teaching us to listen and how we can really come together as communities when we listen. And just the story of how everything could have gone really bad for those kids, but they got together and they themselves as children, kind of as kids, reflected on what had happened and came up with their own punishments. I just think that that's so powerful, and I wish more communities were embrace that process and taking the time. I think that the key is being able to set that time and that safe space in what you create to allow for those conversations to happen. So I'm thrilled you're here. Such a powerful story and really so inspiring in how we can all come together by listening.
Thank you, Nick J. That's exactly. I think that was the learning outcome from that story, because so many times you think you have to be hard on crime. You have to be hard on people, otherwise they won't learn their lesson. You have to be, and then the idea of hard being effective, right? If you don't have a punishment, it's not going to be effective. I actually had to learn this when I was training. I couldn't unlearn it because when uh, all the programming that I got growing up, justice without punishment is not justice, right? Like, you have to have punishment, otherwise it doesn't look like justice, right? And when I was doing my training, this story was told to me, and it had to do with another case of vandalism. This family in Duluth, and a Jewish family, had their house defamed with swastikas, and their windows were broken, things were thrown in, and then their lawn was completely trashed. Somebody ran over their lawn with a truck, and they had two small kids. And the next day, the Duluth Ledger took out the entire centerfold and printed a Star of David, and that issue sold out. And the entire community, basically everywhere you went, you saw a Star of David in the window. And the whole community got together to support the family over the next couple of weekends, replaced the windows, repainted the house, like donated the lawn to be redone. And the family got to know all of their neighbors got to know all of the families and the surrounding businesses. And the community came together and healed itself, right? And in this situation, the vandals were never caught. So in the first scenario, the kids were caught on video, right? So there is still a sense of like direct accountability. Here, the vandals weren't caught, but it never happened again because the community never allowed it to happen again. And so when I learned this story, I was like, that really changes how I think about justice. Like, it really changes what are the necessary ingredients for justice, is when people take accountability, whether it's you're the one who does the harm or not. When people take accountability for your community, making sure that it's safe, and then helping everybody heal and move forward.
How long have you been doing circles, Michelle?
Since 2015.
Did it change your parenting style?
I would say
Are you
so.
a parent? Yeah.
I am a parent. I have two kids. I have a 20-year-old and a 22-year-old. And I guess you could ask them. I right before this TV show, I did a family circle. We did a family circle. We have our family circles every Sunday.
Yeah.
The whole breaking down of hierarchy, that you are not the expert in their experience, definitely filters through your parenting. Like I never was. I'm a pacifist, so I don't think I was an authoritarian figure to begin with. But I think it definitely influenced my parenting.
Yeah, because when I left the training with you, I was like, I'm gonna do these circles with my kids. I haven't done one yet because I want to kind of like pick a topic or just kind of like prep myself. But I just fell in love with the concept of circles. I think I was already in love with it before even I met you, and to name it a circle. But like from the training that you did with us, you trained us to then do circles with the Hampton Roads Community Foundation, and so we already did one round of those circles. And I just love the impact that it creates for people, especially the hierarchy piece, right? And I remember one of the things that we discussed in the training was, when you're in front of a judge, somebody has power. When you're with a mediator, less power, but somebody's still like directing stuff, right? When you're in circle, you are a circle keeper and you're a participant in the circle. So everybody has a voice, there's respect. Everybody is very communal because everybody agrees on things. And you feel nothing but respect and like harmony within the circle. And I just think that it's just amazing. And it just brings like just like level, like it brings level to you. And even for some of the other people that are counselors and they're learning to do circles, they really have to change, like Michelle was saying, their vocabulary has to change, their way of thinking has to be rewired, because like she was saying, like punishment is like how you respond to like an act, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. And I think it goes to, we always mention the word grace in this show, to give people grace. And I think it's also to get understanding, because we're all human beings and we process things different, and our upbringing, our experiences are different. So like, let me get to know why you did this, and why were you feeling the way that you were feeling, and that everybody has a voice. I think that was the most impactful thing for me, is just that everybody has an equal voice and it's not being judged.
Yeah. And the punishment piece, it's funny because it's not that there isn't punishment, right? But punishment in terms of accountability, right? That there is an impact to your actions, but it's an appropriate impact to encourage healing, that you are actually part of the healing process. You've caused the harm, so you take responsibility and become part of the healing process, versus being thrown in jail, like a carceral format, like where you're not part of any solution whatsoever, right? The idea of thinking that you're gonna, when you put somebody in jail or or take them or put them in suspension or detention, that they're part of a solution at any it just, it takes away the ability for them to actually be held accountable and be responsible for the harm that they caused. And I think that the mindset, there's a shift in mindset that needs to happen.
Have you
I
ever experienced, I'm sorry, Nick, there.
Oh, no, no, it's okay. I'll ask a question after you're done. I had a good
I was just
question
gonna
that
ask,
popped.
has a circle ever gone bad for you if that happens?
So I I was a co-founder of a group called Hidden Water, and Hidden Water uses circles to help people impacted by child sexual abuse. And I left in 2021, and it was actually partially as a result of a circle that went badly. So it was a keeper support circle, right? A support circle where I was actually like coaching the keepers that were in at Hidden Water, helping them through all the issues that they might have during their circles. So I coach keepers as well. So I teach circles, I coach keepers, and then I also run my own circles. But instead, one party took over the circle and used it to talk about grievances of something else. So that circle went pretty poorly. Like I had
Got
no
it.
idea that that was how what was going to, because I went in with I'm helping people, deal with some of the challenges, and then it took some one keeper came in and had a completely different idea of what to do, and that circle went pretty badly. Yeah.
Mm.
So there are examples of circles that have gone badly. Um, So I'm going to give you an example based on that organization that I help found. Hidden Water has 4 different types of circles. It's and we use colors instead of labels so that people don't get role exhaustion. There's green for people who have experienced harm as children. There's orange for parents who are unable to keep their child safe, or orange for people parents who are unable to keep their child from offending. People who have caused harm, and then the fourth one is friends and family who have been impacted indirectly by the child sexual abuse. So a circle that could go very, very badly is if people sit in circle together that are not prepared. So if an offender, if someone who's caused harm sits in circle with somebody that they did have harmed, right, they could very, very easily re-injure, and it could cause harm again. So that requires the keeper to do a lot of preparation beforehand. And so that's why we do affinity circles beforehand. So that when a person who has experienced harm is prepared to actually talk about the harm that caused them, the impact on their life, and ask for specifically what they need for their healing. Like a lot of people are too ashamed to even talk about that. People who have caused harm, we prepare them so that they're actually able to show up in circle and take responsibility for their actions, own their actions, take responsibility for their actions, and show remorse. And so if they're not prepared, they don't sit in circle with somebody they harmed because it will just re-injure. So that's another example of a circle where harm could happen very easily.
Yeah, I love that. When I looked up, because I did FBI on you a little bit, but and you had told us about the organization you co-founded, and I went on it, and it was like there's like a waiting list, to join the circles, because you could do virtual circles too. It's not just in person.
Yeah.
There's like a waiting list on
During
them,
the
and I
pandemic, it was all virtual.
yeah,
Wow.
I just love the concept of the colors. I love colors, by the way. And Ike is a graphic designer, so she loves colors too. But I just love the concept where the colors identify you with whatever your role was in that scenario.
I think it was basically to get out of that victim perpetrator mindset,
I
because
love that.
ultimately, when I did a lot of the intake for the program, and many people who've caused harm, who inflicted child sexual abuse on children, were harmed themselves.
Right.
So
Mhm.
to say that they're only a perpetrator is very, very it's not accurate to their experience. They were a victim and they were a perpetrator, you know,
Yeah.
and a lot
Wow.
the parent will cause harm too, so indirectly. So it's
Mm.
never quite as simple or black and white as people try to make it out to be.
Mhm. So I had a couple questions, Michelle. As you were talking, my first one was they're kind of both tied together. Have you ever done a circle where someone is a narcissist, where they clearly they say they want to get help, but then it's not their fault? How would you kind of manage this, whether it's in a family circle or in a community circle too, where sometimes narcissists can do more impact on their community? And then my second question was why you chose those certain colors for those four groups.
Sure. So the first question about the narcissist, I've had direct experience and personal experience from having people who are in circle that also that have very narcissistic characteristics. Um, so in circle, what ends up happening is, because the talking piece keeps moving, the amount that the space that the narcissist can take up is only the sliver of time that they have, right? So it basically, because the group manages itself in terms of time, a narcissist can only take up so much space. That said, if a narcissist does end up taking a lot of time and a lot of space, it is up to the keeper to say, we had guidelines about time, and we do need to take, we want to hear everybody's voice, but we also need to make time for everybody else and space for everybody else. And so we're going to implement a timer. And I will give the role of a timer to one of the other participants, and they will basically put a timer on their phone and say, okay, time's up. Time's up, pass, 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 pass. But because of the distributed format of circle, the impact of a narcissist is minimized. It's not nothing, but it is
Mhm.
minimized. And the one of the reasons why a narcissist actually has to take up space is because they don't feel heard and seen. Something about circle, because people see, like, there's no tolerance for a lot of the fake things. Like,
Mhm.
the real stuff surfaces. And I think narcissists only thrive in spaces where they can only latch on to those narratives, those surface narratives that they've already created. Circles themselves actually lend themselves to going deeper and into more authentic spaces.
I love that. So it becomes more healing in the process. It kind of just opens up a little bit more of that healing space
Exactly.
by creating that. I love that.
There is also like the prep for it. So if it's a teaching circle like the one that I held with Viviana, I wouldn't screen out narcissists for that. But if it's for a child sexual abuse case, I might screen out for that. Like, because
Yeah.
you would have to do prep for that. Yeah.
Mhm.
The
So
second,
the circle keeper does the screening, right? You kind of do a little bit that, or is that as a community of circle keepers that does the screening?
so if it's a community circle, right? First you can go like as a keeper, part of your preparation for the circle is like you figure out who are the stakeholders, what you're going to be talking about in the circle, and who is that topic important to. And then you bring in somebody, you identify one list that you think that might be appropriate. From that list, you ask them who else, those people that you've identified, who else would you think this is important for? And from that group, you start calling, right? But you do, like for a child sexual abuse case, you do need to do some screening. You don't bring in people who's going to actually re-injure the system. So,
Mhm.
Makes
sorry, I
sense.
forgot the second question that you had.
It was you had 4 groups and you gave
Oh, the
colors
colors.
to each of the groups. What was the process behind
There was a
choosing certain
graphic
colors?
there was a graphic designer involved, and then they also talked about vibrations of the different colors and how they tied the vibrations and the frequencies of the colors and how they tied with the different experiences.
That's
It's
awesome.
Yeah.
like green as a person who's experienced harm somehow represented rebirth. I think purple for the people who've caused harm. There is a ultraviolet vibration to it where people that you're basically forced to face inward a little bit. That's more internal. There were reasons behind the orange and the blue too, but I can't remember.
I love
That's
that.
right
I
up your
love that.
alley, Nicte.
Yeah, I know. That's why I was like really curious because yeah, there's all sorts of meanings to the colors. And blue, what was the group for blue?
Blue were friends and family.
Friends
So
and
either
family.
friends and family of somebody who was harmed, and then friends and family of someone who might have caused harm. So, for example, I was a greenkeeper. So everybody who was a keeper had the same experience. So I was a greenkeeper. So I had experienced harm as a child. But then my husband attended a blue circle, sort of like because
Oh,
indirectly I might react to something he is saying that has nothing to do with him that might be from my experience. So understanding that and not being able to hold space for that. So.
So you said the purple was the ultraviolet and you had to like reach within. Is that what you said about the purple?
People are
like the
people who
stuff.
have experienced harm.
Gotcha.
So Tangi just asked, can you tell me purple and orange again? Okay. So purple, so I'm going to start from the beginning. Green, people who have experienced harm as a child. You're an adult now, but you experienced harm as a child. Purple are people who caused harm to children. Orange are parents and guardians who are unable to keep their child safe. Right. And then blue are friends and family.
Love that. I
I
can
love
see
it.
how the
Mark,
power
our
of blue
producer,
can
wants to
be.
know if you have ever done circles in school. Sorry.
Oh, that's a group I work with most frequently. So Viviana, when I came to you, I trained at the WYCA, and I actually worked with Southampton Roads Community Foundation. So that's another group that I work with, like nonprofits and people who are doing harm reduction work. But the other big group that I'm working with is schools, and it's mainly to dismantle the school to prison pipeline, the incarceration, mass the epidemic of mass incarceration. Most of the schools that I work with are underfunded, underrepresented schools. So schools where everybody's pretty stretched thin, like especially post pandemic. I've talked to a lot of educators who are they've been teaching 20, 30 years, and they said they've never seen it this bad. They've
Mhm.
never seen it this bad. There's a school where the eighth graders are reading at first grade levels, and they're trying to teach, scientific measurement to kids who can't even read, basic, you know, um, basic
Their
books.
phonics is off. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the system is actually very stretched very, very, very thin right now.
Yeah. It's so funny when Michelle and I met when I left. So I don't know if I told you, Michelle, but I own a tutoring business, right? And so I was like, I want to do parent circles, right? Because we have all these programs for the kids, right? The kids. And I just think that we need to have circles for parents, right? And so that, like, I think that following week I emailed Michelle and I was like, how do I get the second and the third
Oh
training?
yeah.
You know, because I'm ready to go. But I just, and it's so crazy. 2 weeks ago, a lady came to my office because she wants to do something with the Latino community. And they actually hold parenting circles at this place, but it's not your type of circles. So I'm going to go check it out this Wednesday to see what they do. But I think they just call it that. But I don't think it's with this concept in mind. I think it's just, circle was the shape that they selected. Um, but I know with circles, there's many types, right? There's the celebration, the learning, the community building, the dialogue, the healing, and then you told us about the problem solving circles.
Yeah.
So the support circles, reintegration, decision making, conflict, and harm circles. I wanted to ask you, do people like, how do you because I'm thinking about like marriage counseling, right? Um, what do they ever do, whether it's premarital or after marriage counseling, as couples or just the couple with the circle keeper?
So I didn't tell you this. I don't think I ever told you this, Viviana, but I am also a mediator. So
Oh.
the couples that I work with are usually like through my mediation business. I haven't worked with couples in circle.
Mm.
So the thing with circle is, and one of the complicated things about you asking, can I do level 2, level 3 circles training, is you notice that for level 1, you actually needed a circle. Like
Yeah,
I teach circle by being in circle. I don't teach circle as like, I'm doing a lecture and you're taking notes and I have a PowerPoint
yeah,
presentation.
we did a circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't do that type of training. I do an experiential training where you're sitting in circle. So I actually have to get, enough people to sit in circle to run a training. And so that when you ask me the question, so I was like, next time Southampton Roads wants to sponsor me and get a
Yeah.
whole bunch of people together,
Look,
I'm
I'll
happy
come
to
to
come
New
down.
York.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Road trip.
I have family in New York. I can come.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
it's just like it doesn't work to teach it like as a lecture. So much of what circle is actually you have to actually feel it and experience it so that as a keeper the type of feeling and quality that you want to create in your circles because you can't do that in lecture format. And it's actually how I learned it in circle format, so I wouldn't even know how to convey that to you and in a lecture format. But that brings me back to there's a lot of different types of circles. And so where is the type of circle that I learned from? So I learned my circle practice from an amazing person. Her name is Kay Pranis. She is one of the leading advocates for circle process in the jail system, in the federal prison system. She was the head of restorative justice in the Minnesota court systems as well. But she spent time living with the First Nations people of the Yukon, and she learned circle practice through them. And so I was passed the circle practice from the peoples of the Yukon indirectly through Kate Pranis. She's written a bunch of books. So if you ever look up restorative justice circles, Kate Pranis's name will come up, on the search very, very quickly. But she's written a lot of books about that. That's where my circle practice comes from. And I have a circle practice where if you don't have a talking piece, it's not a circle.
Mm.
So chances are, Viviana, you go to this parenting circle, they might or might not have a talking piece. So I know I shared this with you, Viviana, but for Nick Day, the talking piece is actually ancient technology. It is a way to distribute power. And in most spaces that we are in, most meetings, it's top-down driven. Somebody comes in with agenda. A lot of people have like, this is their interest. They want to have action items. They want a list of outcomes, So that's most meetings that you go to, right? Like you're basically, unless you're running the meeting, you're one of the participants, and there's definitely a power structure that you're dealing with. And anytime you want to speak, right, you actually have to take space. You have to actually go in and intentionally take power, right? The talking piece, basically, just by being up there, just by showing up in circle, the power is given to you. Every time the talking piece is passed, power is given to you willingly, freely, as part of just being a participant. Not because you have anything, not because of any hierarchy, but the talking piece determines, like, it's your turn. And every time you have the talking piece, you have the whole power in the circle. Even if I'm the keeper, I don't have the power anymore because the person with the talking piece has the power. So without the talking piece, it's not the type of circle I run anymore.
I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
think
That
the
just
talking
sounds
piece
so
is like
powerful.
crucial. Mhm.
Yeah. It really, I think that symbol of, for me, kind of like, I'm very visual, of course, but just the fact that I can envision that being in a circle, and from what Viviana was talking about when she experiences, is that the idea of just, a physical object being passed down to you is so much more powerful than saying, okay, now it's your turn to talk or your turn to talk. It just feels like that presence makes such a big difference. And in hearing you talk, Michelle, I was kind of curious because you were initially mentioning, especially in the business world with meetings, there's always that agenda and money driven, what are we going to get out of this? Have you ran any circles within a company or a business, and really kind of focusing more on the human aspect, especially with DEI thoughts and processes in there, so that people can feel more comfortable as a team and kind of build that connection?
So I haven't run team building circles like that. That's a great idea. I have run brainstorming sessions in circle format. Yeah.
Ooh.
So people have brought me in to run brainstorming sessions. I've also gone to company retreats, staff retreats, where I have run circles to manage conflict for, like work conflict. So sort of clearing out, bad patterns of behavior within management teams and work people. But I have not run just team building exercises like that, which would be phenomenal. I've
Oh,
done
I think
that.
you would be fantastic at that. Really.
I
There
think
is a
that
need for that.
in terms of building community and building trust, it's like an instant win, I think. But no, I've run brainstorming sessions where if they are trying to launch a product and they're trying to come up with different ideas on, okay, who could this product be good for? So I will run brainstorming sessions for like that, and then I do the conflict resolution as well. But
I love that.
yeah,
I
so it's
love that.
possible to run
Yeah.
these circles in for-profit spaces. Absolutely.
Yeah. Brilliant. Because I really do think that that's where there's so much power in what you do throughout. But I think sometimes we are so stuck in this business mindset of doing, 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 that I think people might even take a personal lesson from being in a circle in a business environment and taking it to their own family, or building that curiosity of like, how can I build this process in my own personal community, or with my family. So I didn't go through the training, but when Viviana was saying that, it really made me think of how can you apply some of these things into how we do our day-to-day business and life, because it really does. Just, I think the power of empathy and listening, people don't embrace enough, because we're always trying to say what we think, and it's taking up space and not learning to be, okay, I'm going to listen now to someone else speak. So yeah, it's just, I'm super excited hearing you talk, Michelle. I think that there's so much power in what you do, and yeah, it's just really intriguing and for me to kind of learn about your process.
So, Nikki, I wanted to answer something about what you were
Hi,
saying.
Maddie. Maddie's listening to
Oh, hi, Maddie. So, can you just sum up exactly what you said again? Because there's a question that came up that I really want to answer. and I can't remember it
Yeah.
now.
So in the idea of how I felt that running circles within just a business space, that people might even just take insight from that,
Okay,
experiencing it in a business way, to bring that to their
so
personal lives, like their
I
family or community.
I remember what came up for me now. So when you're working in businesses now, they know how to say catchphrases, right? We value our diversity. We do, all these. They say these things, but they don't do anything to actually, that actually demonstrate it.
Mean it.
Yeah.
Hmm.
With circles, and like they think, thinking outside the box, like that's another saying that people you overuse, right? So with circles, since everybody's voice is valued the same, right, you are actually hearing things that are outside the box. You are actually valuing the diversity in your group, because you're actually gathering dissenting voices that are not just following, what the top down driven agenda is. You're getting everybody's input, and there's something very, very valuable about collective wisdom, right? We focus in this our society so much on the individual, so much so on individualism, that we've forgotten that collective wisdom is so incredibly valuable. I'm looking also.
Love that.
There's a question here about how has circle training helped people get out of that school to prison pipeline? Can I? And I'd like to answer that question. Is that
Of
okay?
course.
So when you are able to intervene in school situations, and the traditional discipline systems are basically detention, suspension, right? You start off with that when kids, when you get a police officer called in for an incident. If a kid comes in, has a fight, or brings in a weapon or something in school, if you are able to intervene at that point in a restorative process, right? In a restorative process, you might have you might have circles, you might not, but in a restorative process where teachers are trained in restorative processes, that you basically fold the kid in, see the kid as a whole, not just as a problem, right? And try to figure out how to support this kid so that they can actually function in the classroom. And not just basically throw them into suspension and detention will just increase their missed days of school and basically increases their chances of going to jail. So it is like a holistic process, right? Where you're actually looking at the whole kid and how to support them.
I feel like, Michelle, I think every school should have your program embedded in there. Like there should be some sort of circle keeper in every school, especially with low funding schools, or schools that have a high population of children who might need more of that support. And the staff, just hearing what you're saying, I just, yeah, I think that there's just so much impact, and the world can be a much better place
Yeah.
if we just really kind of embrace more of this process.
The problems that teachers are facing right now are pretty overwhelming. Like
Mhm.
the behavioral issues that they're having are really so extreme. You know, what is that called? It's again anti-authoritarian. Like there's something very, very anti-authoritarian, and when it's not that you shouldn't question, you should always ask questions. You should always be curious. But when you basically have to bring other people down, the entire classroom becomes about managing behavioral problems rather than getting through any kind of material. It's a
Yeah.
it's the and teachers are so burnt out. I feel so I feel very, very empathetic towards teachers.
Yeah, they are. I went to a school board meeting recently, and they're just, restructuring the budget, proposals for giving more money to the teachers, to making sure that their health insurance, payments don't go up and stuff like that. But I just think that, to really think outside the box, would really help, because sometimes it's not the money, sometimes it's just the environment that I'm working in, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you caught this, Nick, there, but this is how Michelle is so amazing, right? So even with the question that she asks, she even asked for permission if it was okay to answer that question, right? And that's a circle behavior, right? Because it's not something that I'm imposing, right? It's not the authority, it's just the respect of, these conversations, the dialogue. And I think a lot of us don't conduct ourselves in that capacity. And it is a training of rewiring our brain, because we may even do it with our children, with our mates, with our parents. And I think I love that, and I'm glad that I caught when you did it, Michelle, because it just reminded me of the mentality that we should have. I come in contact with a lot of children all the time, and I just see it as children that are hurt, or they're lacking something from school or from home. And that's why I thought about the parent circles, because we, as parents, we don't realize how much content these children are receiving from themselves, from their peers, from their teachers, moms. Just everything is coming to them so much that I think that we haven't applied our empathy, um, piece to them to realize how much they receive from so many directions. And I think definitely circles would help the staff, the administration, the parents, and in turn, it would help the students, I think.
I love what you were both saying, because I think it also made me reflect on how sometimes we are so eager to give advice when someone just wants to be heard. And I kind of wrote a little comment that sometimes our family gives a lot of unsolicited advice, and it's with well intentions. It's not to cause harm, but sometimes it comes out of a space, instead of saying, I might be wanting to vent, or just to be heard, or just to get something out there. And that's all I'm looking for. And so I think that making I feel inspired in making more of that conscious decision of, if someone is talking to me or they're sharing an experience, to ask permission, or to ask permission to answer questions, or ask permission to, may I give you some insight, or may I give you something that are may I share something that I'm learning from this, and kind of shifting it in a way where we are learning from their experience. I think kind of from what you have been teaching, Michelle, and learning about circles, it's more about rephrasing or paraphrasing what you've learned from that person's experience will open them up more to hear perspective or insight or any type of support, instead of saying, well, have you tried this, or have you tried this? Because I think sometimes that term sounds a little bit condescending when it doesn't mean to be, but I think sometimes it shuts people down. So
So
I
Nikki, this
kind
is
of
this is a passage that we actually trained on, Viviana. I gave them some homework. It was over a course of 2 days, and I had homework over that one night, and it was a reading about service and the difference between service, um, helping, and fixing. And we can argue about the words and whether service means a relationship of equals or not. But the author of this passage says that helping, despite the fact that you have best intentions, right? If you're helping someone, it is not a relationship of equals. It's a person helping from a person of strength to helping a person up with weakness. And it's not a relationship of equals. Fixing is also not a relationship of equals. Fixing is like you have expertise and you're fixing somebody who's broken. It is not a relationship of equals, even though you have the best intentions, right? Serving, you serve with your whole self. You serve with your weaknesses. You serve with your darkness. You serve with your wounds. Everything you have and everything you are as a holistic person serves. And so you serve in as equals. You serve somebody and that person serves you back as equals. So the way you just reframe that in terms of if you're listening very empathetically to somebody's experience, you know, your experience, what it's bringing up for me, and I am learning so much from your experience, and hoping that actually blows something up, like basically create some space for them to have their own epiphany. That's exactly, I think, one of the points of Circle. It's like you hear yourself in other people's experiences, and
Hmm.
then vice versa, they hear yourself in yours. Another thing, Nikki, that you brought up in terms of traditional forms of meetings, and that you have to actually take power in Circle. If you think about it, if it's like 10 people, your time speaking is only 1/10 of the circle. That means 9/10 of this time you're listening, right? And so the way we like to frame it is that when you're speaking into circle, you're sharing a gift. You're giving a gift to circle of your experience. But the other 9/10 of the time, you're receiving the gifts of circle. And
I
so,
love that.
yeah, so when you think about like traditional therapy, traditional meeting, like if you're not speaking, you're not getting anything out of it. Like, what am I getting out of it? I've got to I got to take up more space because that's how I get something out of it. This is like the reverse. It's
Mhm.
actually you give your like 1/10 of the circle, you're giving your gift, and then the other 9/10 you're receiving the gift of circle.
Love that.
Yeah.
That is such a powerful way to put it. Yeah.
One thing that I heard this week, Regina King, her son committed suicide. I think he was like very young, but Regina King she's an actress, and she was explaining, she was talking about her grief, right? Because I think it's a 1 year anniversary that's coming up that he committed suicide, and she said she had to learn to accept that her son didn't want to be here anymore. And it's just that even though it's grief, but it made me think about it when you guys were talking about that this is who you are. Like, this is who Michelle is. This is who Nick Day is. And this is who you are. And who am I to judge who you are or how you live your life or how, any of these things. And I think that's why I love just the idea of the circles again, because it's the acceptance piece, right? I don't have to agree, but I just acknowledge it and that it's there. And I thought it was very impactful when Regina King said that, because I had never thought about that. Like, nobody, whoever has committed suicide or tried to commit suicide, I really cannot put myself in their shoes because of what they're living, what their experiences. And she was just saying, like, he just didn't want to be here, you know? And it was just like, it was hurtful, but like, I get it. And maybe that was her way of coping with him not being here. But I just thought it was a little interesting to hear
So
it in that way.
I have unfortunately held circles for parents who survived kids that have committed suicide. So that's another circle that I've held. It's like Viviana, one of the things that we had in our circle practice was centerpieces,
Mhm.
right? This centerpiece for this circle was a Letterman jacket for the person who the kid who committed suicide, and the talking piece. He was a Eagle Scout, and it was the piece of wood that he learned to make fire on. The piece of wood that he learned to make fire on. So yeah, it's circles for people to manage grief and talk about grief is incredibly, incredibly powerful because people grieve differently.
Mhm.
And so when you see somebody grieving not the way you expect them to grieve, you think that there's something wrong there, and there is really nothing wrong there. And to be able to express that and sit in circle and hear other people's experiences of grief is so healing. Because instead of having these isolated experiences of pain, you get to hear how other people are dealing with it, and so that it becomes a bonding and community building, and that even though you might grieve differently, right, you are sharing that pain and you're sharing that loss of that person.
Mm.
So grief circles are incredibly, incredibly powerful. One of the things I learned in circle practice also is that all problematic behavior stems from unresolved grief.
Mhm.
And so next time you have some problematic behavior, somebody cuts you off in traffic, somebody ignores you, there's some unresolved grief there.
That would make sense. So it makes us feel more empathetic to
You
they
could
might be
roll
just
down your
having,
window and you'd be
yeah.
like, resolve that grief.
Oh man, that is funny. So Michelle, our time is almost up. We're gonna have to have you
I
come
see there's
again.
another really good question here. How ancient is the circle philosophy? Is
Yes,
that something you're interested in hearing about?
definitely.
So there has been histories of circles and circle practices like going back millennia in all the different continents in different spaces. And usually in groups where there's less hierarchy. So now I'm reading this book by to an anthropologist and an archaeologist called Dawn of Everything. And there's lots and lots of archaeological evidence of non-hierarchical complex societies. So I'm actually learning a lot from this book, but that's like the history of circles go back millennia. And Viviana, like you sat in circle, it became very, very naturally, right? Like you said, it's something. It's like you love circle practice even before you met me, right? I
Yes.
think it's actually built into our DNA. I think this is the way people are meant to be able to see and be seen and relate to each other.
So I had a question for you since you mentioned that. I've never been to an AA meeting or anything like that, but I know in movies, like I always see them sitting down in circle. Do you know if that's what they do?
I've never sat in an AA meeting myself, but I've held circle, like, a lot of the people who have gone through my circles have been in AA meetings and they say it's comparable, except that sometimes they don't have a talking piece. They do have some of the similar guidelines where there's no crosstalk, that you basically respect people's autonomy, respect people's um, confidentiality. So similar guidelines, also holding each other accountable. There's some there's some large overlap.
Hmm. Yeah, I find that interesting. So, Michelle, do you do circles like every day? Like that is your life? Circle, 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 circles?
I do circles. I do speaking engagements. I do training. I do mediation, and then when both parties won't come to me, if only one person comes to me and the other person won't come to me, that's called conflict coaching. So
Oh.
it's basically mediating, but just mediating one side of the situation, helping that person manage their conflict. So that's most of the work. And then I go and help organizations basically become less hierarchical. So those are the,
I
I had
love it.
a question, Michelle. If I could ask
And so,
one
in
last question,
this is a
Viviana.
question that I always ask our guests. Where do you
so sorry. I think you're frozen. Is that on my side? I didn't know.
I
I
don't know.
I'm
don't.
Let me
sorry.
move.
Are,
I think we have a
I
little
think
bit of
we're
a
good now.
lag.
okay. Can I hear the question again?
Oh, I just wanted to ask a quick question. So, with all the work that you do, Michelle, and sometimes, the topics can be very heavy and, hear people's painful experiences. I am a very big empath, so sometimes I take other people's experiences and I carry them with me. Is there anything that do you experience this when you're running circles, and how do you kind of manage that in letting it go and kind of wishing it well or helping people throughout the process?
So great question. But this is something I dealt with earlier before my circle practice. When I was a mediator, I mediated a situation where I got to like my clients a lot. Like, I really was rooting for them. And I had like I really wanted them to resolve their conflict and fix their situation. And I was like very, very positive. And then found out that one of the parties was actually using the mediation to delay so that they can get the rights to the product so that he could basically blow out the other people. So he basically used my process, the process of mediation, to as a stalling tactic, and it felt so bad. I got physically sick from it because the other people were tricked out of their part of their ownership. They were tricked out of their ownership. I felt sick, and I felt like I should have seen something. I felt like I should have known. I felt like I should have asked a question that could have shed some light on something. I just took on a lot of responsibility. And I had a mentor at the time who told me, you've got to take yourself out of that. That was not your fault. This basically what happened was meant to happen. Is like they're in a better place now, even though those two people don't have ownership of the thing. That relationship has dissolved, so that they're moved on. Like that conflict is no longer existence. They've moved on, and you know you can only do so much, right? And so I had to get my head out of that in order to actually be of service to people. Because if I take on the responsibility to fix people, so there is that fix, help, and serve mindset. And when I'm in that serve mindset, I'm giving as much as I'm taking. Right. So when I hear your story, I'm also hearing my story and your story, and it is reciprocal. I am feeding myself in my circle practice. I'm giving and feeding and in the same breath. Right. When I'm helping or fixing, I'm taking responsibility for something that I don't have responsibility for. Right. And so I am basically, it's an output without a lot of input. And so that is draining. And so when I'm coaching circle keepers, I do tell them that your role in this is basically the process, right? You can feel empathy for them, but like that actually is something that allows you access to help the process, not because you have to actually take it on as a burden. So it passes through you. You take that empathy and it passes through you. You take that feeling and it passes through you because, you know, taking it on and holding it on as your own can only harm you and basically negatively impact your ability to be of service.
Very impactful.
Powerful. Yeah, very powerful. Thank you, Michelle.
Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Miss
we
Anna,
love it.
what's
I
your-
love the circles. I just think that so every show I always say, because so this platform is really to educate people. Um Mark, we're live, but Mark runs it throughout the whole week, and so it's through Roku TV, Pod TV, and so it's seen everywhere. So our objective here is to just really impact people, to educate people on the alternatives, the options of, you know, how to handle things. Um, one of the things too that we wanted to do is just to impact our community. Que pasa mujer means like what's going on, women. So we are Latinas. Mari, Nicte, and myself. Nicte and I are cousins, by the way. I don't think I ever told you that, but we're actually we're first cousins. So we've known each other for a long time. We used to dress up as twins, even though we're like.
Yeah.
Um, so and I always have to say this for every show, the Latino community contributes $3.2 trillion to the United States, to the economy. And so one of my passions is to impact the Latino community. And so that's why I get so excited about the circle, because I always think about parents, because that's my heart, education. But I also think about my community, the Latino community, and how this is so, you know, from our indigenous people and how things used to run in the past, and how we can potentially bring these things back because it works. And I'm sure, Michelle, you have thousands of stories, of success stories, to demonstrate how this works and why are we not doing this. And I just wish that we would do more of this, so that whoever is doing the budget can, you know, hire people like yourself to like really do impact
Yeah.
community.
And I would love to hear more about your circles that you're running with the Southampton
I know
Roads.
I froze a little bit, but I hope that came through.
No, I did hear you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just love the work that you do. Again, if you guys want to get in contact with Michelle, her website is on the banner, mlgcircles.com. You know, just follow her. Just amazing thinking outside of the box method. So we want to thank you again for your time, Michelle. It went by so quick. Hopefully, you will
It
agree
did.
to come back so we can dig in a little bit more. But
Yes, please.
we
So
absolutely enjoyed it.
thank you so much, Viviana. Pleasure.
Thank you,
Yes,
Michelle. This was
yes. Nicte, you're
fantastic.
good?
Can
I
you hear
love it.
me?
Yeah,
It's super noisy
yeah,
here.
we hear. Yeah.
Thank you,
So usually at
Michelle.
the end of our usually at the end of our show, Maddie usually does a poem for us, but she's not here today. So we'll play one of her old ones, and then we'll go into commercials. But we're here every Sunday at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and usually we stream it to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. I think that's what we're doing so far. But I'll send it over. And again, it was such a pleasure to have you. When I emailed you and you told me yes, like I immediately texted the ladies and I told her that you were going to be on the show. So I look forward to having you again. And it's amazing work that you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
and have a great
you.
week, Michelle.
Thank you.
Cuídate.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias.
My feels all day, well, since yesterday, so I'm just gonna read today. So click, pose. Look closely. Can you see the void beneath the surface? In the eyes, the empty spaces, loneliness, screaming, crying, losing hope, begging for someone to notice, barely hanging on. A smile. It's what happens right before the break. Before the beast tears off my chest, the constant battle with this demon who threatens to drown me whole. I try to loosen from his grip. I swim up to the surface, hoping to get to breathe. Pose. For a second, I try hard to forget how the weight of the world pulls me down. At night, I can't sleep. Nightmares on Elm Street. I stay awake thinking of ways to stay alive, yet I close my eyes. I lay in a postpartum state, so when the Grim Reaper finds me, his job is more than halfway done. I am done, but I survive. For some strange reason, I get to do it again. It's Groundhog's Day, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. They all feel the same. I feel the same exact pain. I cast a lifeline into the world in desperate mode. Click, click, pose. My brain unsteady, like an elephant walking a tightrope. Scattered puzzle pieces that can't seem to make a coherent thought. I think of Chesley, attorney, spokesperson, Miss USA, who had her shit together and still she killed herself. From the 29th floor, she jumped. Depression knows no gender, socioeconomic status. Hurt is hurt. Some can voice it better. Others get lost in the waves. Most days, I surf. It is on those better days I take selfies instead of asking for help. You never know what's been brewing when someone is in a dark place. So when you see those selfies, don't just click on the picture. Check on your strong friends.
When we promise to talk about mental health, we also promise to listen. It's one of the most powerful ways we support each other. That's why Mission Hospital is activating Each Mind Matters in South Orange County. Because caring conversations make a difference. Come join the movement. Make your promise to talk and listen today at promisetotalk.org.
The University of South Dakota Center for Disabilities at the Sanford School of Medicine is excited to announce a new program, the Oyate Circle. Named from the Lakota word for the people, the Oyate Circle offers tribal communities resources and training opportunities so they can help support tribal members with disabilities pursue active, self-determined lives. For more information about this program, visit our website.
The average teenager spends 9 hours a day on screens. Don't be like me. Be like me.
I just need to be left alone right now, man.
No, Cam. I think the problem is that you've been left alone way too much.
Life's hard. The world is complicated.
Remember, you are not alone.
Love you, girl. I love you.
Mental health challenges are common, treatable, and often preventable.
It's time to talk about it.
It's time to defy the fear and stigma that has made so many suffer in silence.
Instead, dare to love yourself and others.
Dare to ask for help and support.
Dare to listen and show up for the people around you.
Join the conversation.
Are just so impressed with them. Like I said, we've been with them for years. I will recommend and refer anyone to them. We stand by A+ academics. They're the best.
A+ tutorial really did help me with all my grades. They all went up when I came to this place. And I would say I recommend this school to everyone.
So it's a really good environment to be in, especially for me because it makes me look up to my parents.
If you have students that need academic help, A+ Academics is the place to be.
A+ Academics, what a great place to go for academics.
It's just a really great place to learn.